Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Terry Lyles, who is the author of Performance Under Pressure. Terry, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mike. Great to be with you.
Hey, so I know that you are the stress coach, so I want to get into that, but bring us up to speed on what brings your career to the point of focusing on stress and performance under pressure.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. Yeah, like some people I know, your career finds you. And I have a Ph.D. in psychology, so I went through, traditional clinical psych training and had private practice up in the Detroit, Michigan metropolitan area for several years. And I always knew I wanted to kind of expand my scope from a clinical room to the corporate world and to athletes. So I ended up starting out with Chrysler Corp, which was in, the Metro Detroit area, then General Motors, and then Ford. And I was doing speaking on training on stress management. How do you do stress utilization?
Yeah.
And this is my fourth book, actually. And so this one has been kind of a byproduct of a lot of that, almost 20 years of doing this, which I can't believe I have to say that, but it is what it is. And I got into athletic training. I started training IndyCar drivers, NASCAR drivers, Formula One drivers, and I've trained like 40 of those drivers, and I still have 2 of them under my tutelage now that I coach and train. So I train drivers at 200 miles an hour how to stay calm with 33 other maniacs, all with road rage. So that's what the book is about, is how do you do that in your own world?
Well, I didn't know you had the background focus on athletics and sports, but the Dennis Waitley, he's the mindset, the performance, and all sports oriented. And I remember from reading his book and going through one of his tape programs. So I've got you. I'll see your 20 years and I'll raise you cassette tape, Dennis Waitley. So
I remember Dennis.
I know.
Our paths crossed once. Yeah, somewhere.
So, you see the people in the Olympics and they're getting ready to ski down the mountain and they're pausing there and they're kind of doing their gyrations like they're following their, ski path, and they're focusing on that. So I love that you are using the foundation of, I personally do not watch or care for Indy or NASCAR, but I have seen it enough just to know, oh my word, can you imagine being in that car? So when you can have success with that world and translate that over into the corporate world, that's got to be an easy transition. There's no corporate CEO that is under that much pressure, no matter what they might tell you. So how do you approach that when you work with people in the corporate world and make those connections?
Well, part of it is, and I didn't really say this, but the training that I developed for the racing world came out of fighter pilot training. I've trained fighter pilots over the years on, how to handle that pressure, pulling 9 Gs, and with enemy fire. And we train with F-18, F-22 Raptor pilots. I actually have a biometric technology system that is an earbud device that has an 8mm chip in it. We can read what's happening inside of their bodies.
Wow.
And it transfers that information back down to the ground through satellite. So I use that same technology starting next year in IndyCar that will be able to monitor the IndyCar driver's vitals, heart rate, breath rate, calories burned per minute. It's almost like a Fitbit on steroids, but in your ear.
Neat.
And we can broadcast it on TV. The first time I ever broadcast it was on ABC at the Indy 500, actually, in 2015. So That's how it all started. So in the corporate world, I use the examples of pilots as an example, pilots and race car drivers, among other sports, to paint a picture of you can't tell a race car driver or a fighter pilot to slow down because it's not possible.
Yeah.
So instead, they train to go fast and not freak out. And that takes the training of the body-mind composite to make that work correctly. And that's really what it comes down to, is helping a corporate athlete, as I consider them, because they're some of the most strenuous people I've ever worked with. Because a fighter pilot is a flight sortie and they may be gone 12 hours worse, maybe an hour here, 3 hours there. Race car driver, an hour and a half, 3 hours, 4 hours maybe. Corporate executives, 10, 15 hours. Yeah, and then 24/7 when they're home. So the problem is that they don't get a break.
Yeah.
And part of my message that I think is so powerful in the book is when I talk about performing under pressure and what that really is, it's how often do you oscillate during the day? How often do you take breaks mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically? And you can do it in 2 to 5 minute segments to actually refresh your systems and recharge in between meetings, in between conference calls. That is the power, because I can do this with race car drivers at 200 miles an hour with other maniacs, and they're doing it while they're driving. So if they can do it when they're driving, I tell athletes all the time, especially in the corporate world, if you don't have 2 to 5 minute intervals in your day to get recovery, you're just driving too fast and you're eventually going to hit a wall.
You know, I really like that analogy that you brought up, and I've never heard it quite that way, which is so many times people think about dealing with stress, and they envision someone sitting with their legs crossed and their fingers in, holding their fingers like, and breathing, and their eyes are closed. In the real world, you are running 1,000 miles an hour, and let's not try to say, no, let's put the brakes on and stop that. Let's just try to bridle it and focus it and channel it, and then throttle back when you can so that you can then go forward. It's kind of like in the athletic world, like since this is the world that you work in too, HIIT training, right? High intensity training. So you sprint, or do something fast, and then throttle it back, and then go again and throttle it back. So I really like that analogy a lot. What do you find executives or entrepreneurs, when you bring that up to them, where do they start? Because I feel like they would go, I'm not, floored at pedal to the metal all day long, and then I'll bet you discover they are.
They are. And we can even test them biometrically improve, because we can watch their nervous system. I can show it stays red versus any green in your day, which is recovery. And that's the proof tech. So if I go in and I wire up an executive and they wear our device for 24 or 48 hours, and I do the module download and show it to them, I can say, and they keep a log. What were you doing at 7 a.m.? Okay, you were having breakfast. Okay. What were you doing at 10 a.m.? What were you doing at 1:30 in the afternoon? I can see minute by minute, hour by hour, what's happening inside of their bodies. And this is performance under pressure. It's how do you do that? And I can show them, if your day is all red with no green, you are hitting a wall. You're going to end up with a divorce, a heart attack, cancer, all these other things, because the body needs to modulate. It's not designed to be wide open all the time. You can run fast, but like you just said, you have to oscillate. And if you don't get those down spikes, like an EKG, EEG, it goes up and down, up and down, up and down, right? That's a good day. A bad day is when it's flatlined. Okay, that's linearity. And most corporate people work in linearity. They start, they're Mach 2 with their hair on fire, and they end at the day. They travel home and road rage. They go home, they feed the animals and the kids, and then they fall in bed and want deep and restful sleep. That's not the way we're wired. So I have a chapter on this infant training, that we have to go back to how we're wired. All of us as infants ate every 2 to 3 hours. We slept every 2 to 3 hours, and we exported diapers. That was our whole existence. It's really simple. We grow up and we get away from that. We eat once or twice a day. We don't take breaks, and we wonder why we don't have energy.
Yeah.
And we wonder where our creativity went away. Part of this, I have another section in the book that is this techno stress, that technology causes our brain to stay wide open almost all day because we can't shut it off. And when you can't do that, like anything else, how long can you hold your arms above your head until the blood rushes out? Find out. But gravity will get you. You eventually got to put your arms down. I don't care how strong you are, how flexible you are, how courageous you are. You can't beat gravity. Stress is gravity. So I teach people not to beat gravity, cooperate with gravity. Put your arms up for a minute, minute and a half, put them down for 30 seconds. Put them up for 2 minutes, put them down for 30 seconds. You can do that all day long, because you're oscillating the way your body is wired in gravity.
What you just described there reminds me of some of the martial arts training where they don't tell you to block a punch. They tell you to divert it and use that flow. I think maybe it's Aikido that, you throw the punch and you're just moving just a couple inches and then taking that punch, that arm, and literally taking it and using that momentum and force, not stop it and block it. Well, what you said is we're wired a certain way. We're going to be doing things a certain way in our body. learn what that is and then flow with it and not try to change it up. And that might be really kind of eye-opening for some people, right? It's like I don't need to change and rewire myself. Just kind of see where I'm already flowing and make it work for me.
Well, and I think that's been the success in the corporate world because, believe it or not, the ratio is 1-to-1. They get it. And when I get into their world and their heads and I'm doing training, whether it's 1,000 people or 200 or 10 in a room, executive teams, I start using examples and I have them do breakouts and tell me what their day is like. And they're laughing because they're like, you're right. I don't stop. I have a stress survey in the book and it's basically 20 questions. It's really simple. You can do it in like 3 minutes. And at the end of it, they're all looking at each other going like, wow, I'm burnt out because you're either elite, you're professional, amateur, or burnout. 80% of every room I go to is burnout, or at best, they're amateur, which means their score is below 50.
Yeah.
And they're like, I'm all in, I'm listening. Tell me what to do. And if you look at the questions, they're simple. How often do you eat during the day? How many breaks do you take during the day? How many hours of sleep did you get last night? How long did you hydrate today? How long did you spend time just meditating with your eyes open, thinking about what's good for you versus what's bad for you? You go through this and they're like, all this stuff is so simple.
Yeah.
Okay, corporate person, what's the problem?
But you know what?
It's not that you don't know what to do. You just don't do what you know.
And what you just said is spot on, of course. But here's something else that I know you've heard before in your training. If it's easy to do, it's easy not to do.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's like,
what differentiates that? No, I was going to say what differentiates that is why are you not doing it?
Yeah.
My why of not is because I'm busy. I can't turn my technology off. I turn that around and say, put it to a positive why. I need to because my health, my energy level, my relationships depend on it. And when you switch that why from a negative to a positive, you will now start doing those things because you know why you're doing it.
Well, they don't see, and we can make the argument one way or the other for, strive toward the positive or run away from the negative. But the point is they don't see a clear picture of the end result, whether it's positive or negative.
Yep.
And if they saw the clear end result, either way, it would be like, ooh, A, I could do something about it. B, okay, that's not very hard. You say something, whether it's in your book or in some of your writings that I think is really, really curious. Stress is your friend and greatest hidden asset. How in the world can stress be a friend and a hidden asset?
Because to an athlete, athletes don't use the word stress the way we do if I'm a corporate person. They use a word called competition. Do athletes love or hate competition?
Oh, yeah, love it.
They love it. But you know what competition is? It's stress. You know what stress is? Any potential negative energy or force against you. It could be your opponent in front of you. It could be the weather. It could be your relationship. It could be budget cuts. It could be the economy. It could be Bahamas and I was just wiped out on an island. Whatever your stress is not your problem. The issue is how do you view it? How do you respond to it? How do you recover from it and apply that knowledge? So athletes love stress. They just don't use that word. They use competition. Corporate people hate stress. I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen, you're hating the wrong thing. Stress is nothing more than energy expenditure. If I take fuel and pour it on the ground and light it, I've got an uncontrollable flame. I can take that same fuel, put it in my gas tank, put the cap on it, and drive to you. That's controllable combustion. That's stress utilization correctly versus unutilized stress incorrectly causing a flame that's out of control. Stress is not our problem.
Yeah, I really like that a whole lot because you think about, I know that in my career about 8 to 10 years ago, I was in mortgage banking and you would be fighting and scrambling into the last second to get documents in or this or that or the other. Yep. And you find yourself, like almost like panting and wide-eyed but then when you get it done, you're like, yeah, we got it done. But in reality, that's high stress, but you kind of feel really cool doing it. And I'm sure that there's, endorphins and stress hormones and all that flowing and all of that. But you do too much of that too long, and that's not good. So now we got to learn how to work with that and throttle back. So what are some of the easy first steps? Let's say that someone realizes, all right, I don't even have to take your dumb test. I know that I'm in some negative level of stress. Right. So how do I start kind of being more aware and taking some good steps toward treating it, dealing with it?
Well, the chapters in the book go through this, and it goes through who we are mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. Okay? So MESP. So those are like 4 wheels on the same car. Okay. And as I tell people, you don't have to have 4 flats to have a bad day. You just need 1.
Yep.
So if you're struggling mentally, that's a drainage for you. That's a leakage that you have to plug. If you're struggling emotionally, the same thing. Spiritually, which means your belief system and your why and your purpose for living. And physically is your energy levels, obviously. So in the book, I identify what are your leakages and how do you crack your stress code? Because it's like any identifying code. When you put your passcode in, your computer, your phone, everything opens up. Most people don't know what their stress code is, so they can't unlock the secret that's inside of them, which is stress is not my problem, it's my greatest asset, but you have to unlock that code. So first of all, you have to make sure that you modulate all through the day with recovery every 90 to 120 minutes, 2 to 5 minute breaks, and it could be walk outside, call a friend, go get something to drink, go to the bathroom, but be intentional.
Okay.
Secondly, modulate your electronic usage. I'm not saying shut it off, but I'm saying, you know what, it's okay to go to the bathroom without it. Actually, maybe you should, because it's kind of gross. You go to the bathroom and people are on the phone, they're in the stall. I'm like, I don't want to be in this conversation. Can you just not make sure the camera's on too?
Yeah.
And then number 3, make sure that you're eating and hydrating correctly through the day. We need to be eating like 6 times a day, small portions, like we did as infants, to keep our energy levels high. And lastly, know what your purpose is all day and load your environment up with pictures that inspire you. Kids, family, winning the trophy, a vacation I'm going to take in the spring, and focus on those things. Make them screensavers. Put them up in your office because it motivates us and encourages us to stay true north into what's really important to us and not the grind of the day. So it's really simple, but the first trick is you got to find out what your own stress code is and unlock it, that you know what your inspiration is and what to load in your environment.
And I am only assuming that someone can find out their own stress code by purchasing a copy of your book.
That's correct. Awesome. Yeah, that's the easiest way to do it, because if not, I've got to do one-on-one coaching with you, and I can do that too, and I can it's more expensive, obviously, than the book, but I can do that. Yep. But you've got to be a way to, if you go to a doctor, it's basically an x-ray. You can say, Doc, I've got a broken bone. And he or she says, where? And you go, I don't know. Can you give me a clue? I mean, is it an arm and a leg? I don't know. I just feel like it's broken. Yeah. You don't even know what's broken. You've got to identify breakage, and then I can say, it's not broken, it's fractured, or it's just a hairline, or it's snapped in half and you need surgeries and screws. I don't know until I can see an x-ray. So the survey and the cracking the code piece becomes the x-ray, and then you can prescribe either on yourself by reading the book or by coaching. I can go in and say, look, this is what you need to do. Again, this is what I do for companies, athletes, and it's fun for me because, I've learned how to do it in my own life. My own life is screwed up as everybody else's, and you navigate and make the best of what you have, and that's the beauty of it. And I go through a lot of that in the book. I mean, I do a lot of military debriefing, individuals coming back with post-traumatic stress, which means their activated system has been open all the time. They're full stress on. Then they come home, and they're told to shut it off. Well, guess what? You don't shut it off after 18 months of it being on all the time.
Yep.
So they become adrenaline junkies.
Yeah.
So they buy motorcycles and drive 150 miles an hour. They go drink themselves to death. They're in bar fights, and they go to jail. And they become felons. And it's all because we haven't treated them correctly to debrief them from the stress they were under. So the book goes through, here's stress, how to brief, and how to debrief.
I was just going to say, on the military side, we actually ramped them up and revved them up to do what they needed to do, and then we kind of were like, okay, thanks, bye. No, we need to now just kind of put the stuff back on the shelf where it needs to go, and then let them go home. So that's a really eye-opening application to stress, because a lot of times people, don't think of it that way. So wonderful tips. Thank you for coming on. Tell us what's the best way to pick up a copy of the book. I'm sure Amazon and all of that, but do you have anything on your website, or what's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, we have a special rate we're doing because the book literally just released this Tuesday, which I'm really excited about. And it's really simple. It's TerryLylesStore.com. So it's TerryLyles store.com.
Perfect.
And I want to say this at the end of this. The book is on there, but what I'm really proud of, believe it or not, more than that or as much, is we have 2 recovery manuals that are free, that are PDF downloads. So even if you go there and you choose not to buy the book, that's fine. but at least download the two recovery manuals. One is it's called Caught in Nature's Path. It's for when disaster hits, like the Bahamas, and we just sent cases over there now. It's 32 pages of free information. It's a short version of the book. And the other one is called Caught in the Crossfire, is when school shootings, terrorist attacks take place. We give that away on how to recover from it. So
wow.
Thanks to Southwestern Publishing. They've been a great partner of mine. And, we're about changing people's lives and communities. So I really appreciate being on and having the opportunity to be able to share that.
Terry, thank you so much for coming, and it was really great chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.